What is up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. This is Dr. Hamistang, and today we are going to do a full comparison video here between two of the most expensive and best flagship phones in 2022. In the first corner here, we have the Galaxy S22 Ultra, one of my favorite phones in 2022. It's going up against the iPhone 14 Pro Max, the latest and greatest from Apple this year. So in today's video, what we'll do is of course go through the key specs and features, and of course to help you to decide which phone to get by the end of this video. So yes, without further ado, let's just get right into it. Alright, so we're going to start off with the prices on both these two phones, and I will also include the USD prices as well. So the iPhone 14 Pro Max does start off at about 5079 ringgit Malaysia, and if you want to get the highest spec model, it does go for about 8299 ringgit Malaysia. There is some good news about this is that you can buy the iPhone 14 Pro, which does have the same exact specs as this, but it does have a smaller display, and that does start off at about 5299 ringgit Malaysia. And now going on to the Galaxy S22 Ultra, this one does start off at about 5299 ringgit Malaysia for 256 gigs, and of course you want to get the high spec model, you can get about 5799 ringgit Malaysia. Okay, so now let's talk about the build and design on both these two phones, and I have to say that both of these two phones feel like a real solid flagship when you buy them. Of course, they do have a nice weight to it as well to give you more of a premium feel. Of course, with the iPhone 14 Pro Max, it is heavier compared to the Galaxy S22 Ultra. Both of them are made up of premium materials over here. With the iPhone 14 Pro Max, it does have your stainless steel on the side, and it does have your ceramic shield to protect this. Whereas on the S22 Ultra, they call it the Armor aluminum frame that you can find on the sides, and it does give you that Corning Gorilla Glass Victus Plus, the latest and greatest in terms of the Corning Gorilla Glass for most of the Androids. And in terms of the design as well, as you can see here, it does have the same layout as with the iPhone 11. Here is a little bit different compared to last year's S21 Ultra, but still does give you that penta camera setup. Both of them looking really good. In terms of the colors, I would say both of them are pretty neck and neck. This one here, I got the special green edition. I couldn't get the purple for the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and I did see in the stores it looked really slick. But if I do compare the black color variants on both these two phones, to be honest, they look really good, very slick, very nice. And of course, if you bring it out, it just looks really awesome, and you can just show it off. And the colors, I think, looks really good, and it can last for about 4 to 5 years on this, no worries at all. And it's a very long lasting in terms of the color, in terms of the build material as well, design as well, looking all very awesome. And in terms of how it feels in hand, definitely with the 14 Pro Max, it's a really chunky phone. So with the gestures over here, what I noticed is that first of all, it is a bit of a stretch to maneuver around, especially if you want to click on the top here. You need a lot of finger gymnastics on it. If you want to swipe back, it will take some time for you, especially if you're going to buy a case on it. It will get some adjustment for you to go on the other side. Of course, if you're a left-hander, it makes it more sense, and it's of course easier to do this. It does have your nice curve on the sides, so it's very comfortable to rest on your hand, unlike the S22 Ultra, which does have these squared edges. Over here, it does have the squared on the side, so it is a bit of a grip to hold it, I would say. It does take some time to get used to it, I would say as well. It does feel really nice, and of course you can prop it on your table. But of course, if you go to the S22 Ultra, in terms of just gripping it into your hand, I gotta say that the S22 Ultra here does have a nicer grip, although like I mentioned on the bottom here. But in terms of just how it feels in hand, I gotta say that the S22 Ultra with the curve on the sides here makes it more comfortable to hold, and it's of course lighter compared to the iPhone 14 Pro Max. But all in all, I gotta say the build and design on both these two phones definitely top notch, top of the line, and really good. And also, not to forget, both of these two phones do have an official IP68 rating, so it is water and dust resistant. Alright, and so not to forget, both of these two phones do have an official IP68 rating, so it is water and dust resistant. Now let's talk about the displays on both of these two phones, and what I can say is that first of all, the iPhone 14 Pro Max, it does have your thick bezels on all sides of it, so it definitely does give it more of an outdated look, but it does have a nice flat screen display, which definitely does help a lot when it comes to just maneuvering around. Whereas on the S22 Ultra, it does have lesser bezels, but it does have a curved display. 6.7 inch up against 6.8 inch over here. Of course, it's all a very big phone. And of course, the elephant in the room is definitely that dynamic island over here. They already cut out the notch, so you get a little bit more space on the top. Whereas if you look at the S22 Ultra, it just looks much better. Very, very subtle over here. And when it comes to just watching content, what I can say is that with the S22 Ultra, with that smaller notch, it makes it more enjoyable to watch shows. With the iPhone 14 Pro Max, it definitely still does bother me a bit. I did prefer it with the proper notch last time because they just kind of just cut it out off. Here you do have like some content on the top end corner, but it is of course blocked out by that pill-shaped dynamic island. And of course, when it comes to just the resolution on both of these two phones, both of them do have a very nice display. Here Quad HD+, here also about the same. Both of them do have that LTPO, 120Hz, and of course in terms of peak brightness, here at about 1750 nits, here at 2000 nits. But in day-to-day usage, in my usage here in Malaysia, both of them do have an amazing bright display. When it comes to watching content, colors do look very nice on both these two phones. No problems whatsoever, and I don't think you're going to find a major difference on using both of these two phones. Alright, so now we'll talk about the face and fingerprint unlock on both of these two phones. So with the iPhone 14 Pro Max, we are only given the Face ID. And you're going to notice that there's a bit of an animation when it comes to the Face ID on the dynamic island. But overall, when it comes to this, it's better because it does work, horizontal or vertical, so you don't have to worry about it. Because if you're wearing some gloves or whatsoever, or maybe if you guys are still wearing your face mask, it might be a bit bothersome because you don't have that Touch ID. Going on to the S22 Ultra, you do have the ultrasonic fingerprint scanner, which works really fast in terms of the ultrasonic scanners previously, and it also does have your face unlock, which works pretty fast, I would say. Not the fastest in terms of the Android world, but still definitely quite good. And in terms of the security, I think both of them are doing pretty good. Okay, so now let's talk about the battery and charging on both of these two phones. So with the iPhone 14 Pro Max, they do give you a 4323 mAh of battery, whereas over here on the S22 Ultra, we do have a 5000 mAh of battery. So in terms of size, definitely the S22 Ultra does take it. But when it comes to the screen on time, which is the most important thing, definitely I have to give it to the iPhone 14 Pro Max. It definitely does hold up much longer compared to the S22 Ultra, which is still pretty decent. It does give you a day usage, but over here, you can still finish the day with plenty of juice as well. But again, I'm really impressed with the battery over here. I don't really find myself always finding a cable to charge this or finding a MagSafe charger for this. It holds up really well. This one, normally when I'm done from work, I reach home, I definitely need to charge this up. So yes, definitely when it comes to battery performance, yes, S22 Ultra does fall behind the iPhone 14 Pro Max. And when it comes to charging as well, both of them do have your wireless charging. They do have the 15 watts of charging. Here it does have the MagSafe, whereas on the S22 Ultra it doesn't have that, but it does also support the reverse wireless charging. But of course, if you're like me and you can buy this kind of cases, which you can pair this out with your MagSafe device, which I can use here with my iPhone device as well. When it comes to wired charging, this one does support 45 watts, and over here it only supports up to 25 watts of fast charging in terms of the iPhone world. Alright, so now let's talk about the internal specs on both of these two phones. So with the S22 Ultra, it does come with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 processor. It does have 12 gigs of RAM, and in terms of memory, can go up all the way to 1TB. And it does start off at about 256 gigs storage. And whereas on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, here we do have the latest A16 Bionic chip. It does have 6 gigs of RAM, and in terms of storage as well, it can go up all the way to 1TB. Both of these two phones do not have any micro SD expansion anymore. So I have done a separate performance test to compare both of these two phones, and I'll leave a link up above and also down below for you guys to check it out. Now let's go on to the software side of things, which of course is the main thing when it comes to choosing your next phone. iOS up against the best from Android, which is the One UI 4.1 over here. It will have the latest One UI 5.1, if I'm not mistaken, which is on top of Android 13. So yes, you don't have to worry about it. Whereas over here, it does come with your iOS 16. And what I can say, definitely when it comes to just smoothness, when it comes to reliability, I think both of them do a really good job, but I have to give it to the iPhone 14 Pro Max. It's the only phone that I do have it on rotation basis, which I do turn it off on most of my Android phones, because when you're just rotating your device, the iPhone definitely does it better. It feels very smooth. Opening apps as well, it feels very nice. And of course, if you're just transitioning around, it definitely feels really good. Of course, this year they have added stuff like your always on display on this as well. It does give you your widget since about 2 years ago. You can add stuff to your lock screen as well. Whereas on this device, we have the major stuff like your Samsung DeX, Samsung Pay, and also Apple Pay. Finally, over here in Malaysia, it does have your Edge panel. And of course, in terms of Android 13, which will be coming out a bit later, it will introduce more stuff into this as well. So in terms of which one to go in terms of the software, it's really hard to say. But what I can say when using both of these two phones is that if you want to go crazy, you want to do a lot of things, a lot of multitasking, especially with the S Pen feature, which I haven't talked about yet. Yes, it does have your S Pen feature, so it adds to the experience. A lot of note taking, you can do a lot of stuff with it. It really feels really nice. I do use this a lot. But if you just want a very clean and simple phone, and of course with a bit of some tweaks here and there, the iPhone definitely does take the cake. It does give you the most stable in terms of the animations. And when it comes to software updates, we have seen people who have used the iPhone 7 up until now. So yes, you can use this phone for about 5 to 6 to 7 years. No problem whatsoever. Updates will definitely be going over to here. Whereas on the S22 Ultra, they did promise about 4 to 5 years of major software updates, so you don't have to worry about this as well. But we know in terms of just the reliability, iPhone definitely does take it in terms of the software department. Alright, and last but not least, let's check out the cameras on both of these two phones, and we are going to go through the spec sheet here first. So on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, it does give you a nice 12 megapixel f1.9 sensor with dual autofocus, and it can record up to 4K at 60 FPS. And it does have your cinematic feature built in as well. Going on to the S22 Ultra, it does give you a 40 megapixel f2.2 sensor with dual autofocus, and it can record up to 4K at 60 FPS. So on the back of the iPhone 14 Pro Max, it does have a triple camera setup, starting with your 48 megapixel f1.8 sensor with dual pixel autofocus and a sensor shift OIS. Going on to the first 12 megapixel sensor, it does give you your telephoto lens, it does give you dual autofocus, OIS, and 3 times of optical zoom. And lastly, we do have a 12 megapixel f2.2 sensor for your ultra wide, 120 degrees field of view, and a dual pixel autofocus. And it also does give you a TOF 3D LiDAR scanner. In this phone over here, you can record up to 4K at 60 FPS. You can go all crazy with that 8K recording. And on the back of the S22 Ultra, we do have a quad camera setup, starting with the main lens over here, 108 megapixel f1.8. Does have your dual autofocus, laser autofocus, and OIS. Going on to the first of the telephoto lens, a 10 megapixel f4.9 sensor, does have your dual autofocus, OIS, and 10 times of optical zoom. Second one over here is the 10 megapixel f2.4, does give you 3 times of optical zoom, and it also does have your dual autofocus and OIS. And lastly, we do have the ultra wide lens, 12 megapixel f2.2 sensor, 120 degrees field of view, and it does have your dual autofocus. And this phone here can record up to 8K at 24 FPS. Now let's check out some shots on both these two phones and see which one would come out on top. So I'll be doing a separate camera comparisons on both these two phones because they do have that awesome camera. So that is it between the iPhone 14 Pro Max and the Galaxy S22 Ultra. And of course, the ultimate question is which one to get. For me personally, I am a massive Android fan and I would go for the Galaxy S22 Ultra just in terms of doing a lot of stuff, a lot of customizations, a lot of duty, hard work and all these other things. I definitely prefer this. With the S Pen as well, it makes it more easy to do stuff like the note taking. In terms of camera as well, you can use it as a separate Bluetooth device. So I definitely prefer this, and you know, in terms of stabilization, it's actually pretty good overall, and it does have a very nice camera setup. And yes, one thing to note is that this is still cheaper compared to the iPhone 14 Pro Max. But of course, if you guys have been using the iPhone 7, iPhone 8 or other devices and you want to stick to the Apple software, I think over here with the 14 Pro Max, it definitely does deliver that. It definitely feels a much of a good upgrade. It does have your dynamic island, it does have a massive camera upgrade as well, so really good when it comes to all that, and it's very stable, very solid, and overall it feels like a very premium device. So it's really hard to choose one over the other. I think this point over here, you just have to see what you want. If you want a lot of customizations, a lot of flexibility, this one over here does the cake. If you want something more stable and you want something, you know, more flashy, I think over here the 14 Pro Max does the cake. Of course, these are just my thoughts and my opinion. Do leave yours in the comment section down below. And of course, if you guys did enjoy this video, do click the like and smash the subscribe button down below for more videos like this in the future. Do also follow me on my social as well on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and here on YouTube at Dr. Hammer's Tech. So that is it. This is Dr. Hammer's Tech. Stay safe, take care, and see you in the next one.